My name is Cindy Hirschberg. It is October the 19th in 2009, and we're doing an interview with Dale Keefer here at the Carroll Lutheran Village Wellness Center. Good morning, Dale. How are you?
I'm doing great today.
Good. I noticed when you signed in, you said C. Dale Keefer.
Yes, ma'am.
What does the C stand for?
Charles.
Charles. How did you decide which name to use?
Hardly ever used that my whole life.
Really?
Until I started with Social Security, and I got a little, I didn't get confused, but the record got confused, and I had to start using my first full name.
Did that make you happy?
I was okay. Yeah,
Okay.
sure. If I'm going to get some money out of it, I'm going to be happy.
Anyway, let's start with a little bit of biographical information. I heard you mention earlier that you were born here in Carroll County.
Yes, ma'am.
Whereabouts?
Woodbine, 1932.
Ah, were you born at home?
Yes,
You were, huh?
I think.
What was the nearest hospital? Do you remember?
Frederick,
That's a hike.
yeah. Carroll County Hospital wasn't here at that time. That
Yeah.
was before that.
And the names of your parents?
Was Charles Franklin Dewey Keefer.
Mm-hmm.
Had three names before his last name, and that was kind of unusual to me, I thought. And my mother was Grace Pauline Gosnell.
Would you spell her last name?
Gosnell.
Were you the only child?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yep. And my father, my grandfather came over here from Germany and lived in Twentytown, or near Twentytown, Maryland.
Mm-hmm.
And then when my dad was, I think about 8 or 9 years old, they moved to Route 97 near Barrett,
Mm-hmm.
Maryland. Yes.
What was their occupation?
Farming.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And my dad was a farmer. He was a tenant farmer. He never owned any of the farms that we lived on. We moved around some. When I was 3 years old, we moved from Woodbine to a farm in Eldersburg, which is off of Liberty Road in Eldersburg. And my dad was there a few years, and then we moved across the road to another farm. And we were there, 73. We were there till I was 8 years old, and we moved back to Woodbine, to a farm that was owned by Fred Fleming.
Mm-hmm. So you grew up on a farm?
Yes, ma'am.
What was the first farm job you remember?
Well, I didn't do much with horses. The farm that we moved back to Woodbine had horses on it. And I remember my dad plowing the fields with a team of horses.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of before tractors.
Yes.
And then in 1944, he left that farm and moved about a mile across country to another farm where we had tractors. And so I learned to, at an early age, I was 12, I learned to drive a tractor and drive, in fact, cars and trucks, really.
Yeah.
I was driving on the road when I was 14 and 15. I wouldn't advise anybody doing that today, but I did. And it was, farming was great, really.
Do you remember what the brand of tractor was?
Ford. The man that owned that farm owned Smith Motor Company in Randallstown,
Mm-hmm.
on Liberty Road in Randallstown. They sold Ford cars and trucks.
And what was the family name again?
Schmidt.
Schmidt.
Schmitz.
Mm-hmm.
He was a great boss, and we lived on that farm. I was there till I was 26. Then I kind of chose another career. I had enough of this farming. Farming life was great. It was hard work. I enjoyed that, really, and I learned that farming, you depend a lot on the Lord.
Yeah.
For the sun and the rain to make the crops grow and produce.
Yeah.
Really.
Do you remember any of the horses you worked with? Just the way you remember your tractor?
Not really.
Didn't bond with them?
No, ma'am, I did not do that.
What was grown on the farm? Can you recall?
Well, wheat,
Mm-hmm.
hay, corn back then, and some tobacco.
Really?
We grew tobacco, yeah. Not on a farm that my dad lived on, my dad and mom, but it was the owner of that farm had like a couple other farms, two other farms.
Yeah.
And one of them was up near Taylorsville,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where we grew the tobacco and some worm seed. Grew worm seed.
For heaven's sake.
That was a cash crop back then.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Was the farm self-sustaining? Did you grow all your own produce and?
More or less. We had a huge garden, you know,
Yeah.
everywhere. I remember even when we lived in Eldersburg having a garden, and I mean, My dad didn't make much money. This was 19, let's see, in 44 we moved to that farm where the owner had the owned the Ford Motor Company, or Ford dealership. And my dad was going to earn $75 a month, and that was double his salary from the previous farm at $40 a month.
Wow.
And this was in 1944.
Golly.
Yep. But we had a huge garden and milk, hog meat, killed the beef, had meat, and the only things we bought, and chickens, so we had eggs most every day, potatoes every day, because we grew the potatoes on the farm.
Sure.
And it was almost potatoes, breakfast, dinner, and supper back then, breakfast, dinner, and supper.
Mm-hmm.
But the things we grew on the farm, we bought. My dad I never remember him having an automobile until we moved to this farm in 1944.
Mm-hmm.
The man owned a Ford dealership. We always walked wherever we went, didn't go far, to church, and there was a little store on Woodbine Road that we went to, we walked to. It was less than a mile.
Mm-hmm. Who ran the store?
The lady's name was Alma Harvey.
Mm-hmm.
And the store, I think, belonged to her brother-in-law, and his name was Robert Lewis.
Mm-hmm.
He owned that store.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you went there as a little kid.
Yes, ma'am. Sure did.
Penny candy?
Oh, yes. Plenty of it.
And your favorite was?
Oh, I don't know anymore. Tootsie Rolls, I think.
Okay.
You might have even got more than 1% back then.
Ooh.
I can't remember. One thing I do remember about that store, when I started driving later in life, I bought gas there for the car, 6 gallon for $1, okay? And there was a pump that had a big glass tube at the top.
Did you see the bubbles?
Oh, yeah. And we had a handle, you pump that back and forth to pump the gas out of the tank up into this glass container that you could see. And then we get up to, 6 gallon, you stop, and you put the hose in the car and it ran down in gravity flow into the car. Just now I remember that. This is probably, I got my license in 1948, so it was then, 48, 49.
Wow.
Yep.
Well, that was after the Second World War. Do you remember anything of the Depression? Do you remember
Not
anything?
too much.
Yeah.
See, I was born in 32, so
Yeah.
it was early on that I came through there.
You were a little kid.
Yeah.
Very much a little kid.
But back then, a farm was hard work. I can remember being hard work, but I enjoyed it while I was there. I really
Yes.
did. Yeah.
So, how did you meet your wife?
We met in school, started dating, but not really dating, going together, a girl boyfriend, in the 9th grade.
9th grade.
9th grade. Sykesville School. And back then in we graduated in 1949, that was the only school in South Carroll County at that time. From Woodbine Road to Sykesville, that was the only school in Carroll County.
Well, how did you?
In South Carroll, I'm sorry.
How did you get there?
Bus? Oh yeah, they had buses. And we rode a bus from Woodbine Road, Woodbine Liberty, Hoods Mill Road. We rode up to Winfield on one bus, and then we had to get off of that bus and get on another bus. There was a store in Winfield at that time, owned by Stems. And we'd go in there, and just kind of kill time till the next bus came to pick us up to take it to Sykesville. The second school in South Carroll was Freedom District, and that was built in 1954.
Man.
Yep. And it was just, to me, as I reflect back on that, it is almost unreal that all the children from Woodbine Road to Liberty Reservoir went to that one school.
Wow.
There was 41 in our class when we graduated. And we graduated in 49. We were married in 1951. So, and life goes on from there.
That's really a lovely story. It's not quite the same as what young people experience today when they try to find love in their life. Did you date separate people? Were you ever interested in dating other individuals before you knew this was, no? She
was the only girl ever had any interest
Ever
in.
turned your head, huh?
Yes, ma'am.
So when you took her out on a date, when you met at 9th grade, how did you find that you spent time together? Did you go to 4-H, the fair, or what was the...
Well, not really. She was born and raised on a farm also. And at that time, the farms were about a half a mile apart, and I had a bicycle. So, kind of communicated with that bicycle. But till later on when I got my license, and we started going to the movies. You mentioned movies earlier, and we used to go to Mount Airy, Jones's Theater in Mount Airy on Main Street.
Yep.
And we would go, the movie changed 3 times a week, you know, different shows. So the gentleman who owned the theater, we went almost 3 times a week because it was 35 cents.
Whoa.
And a piece. And he said, I'll tell you what I'll do. You come 3 times a week, I'll give you 3 times for $1. So we saved a nickel. 3 times 35 is $1.05. So big deal. We got a candy bar or something, or a bag of popcorn or something. So we went there a lot to that movie theater.
I am remiss. And the lady's name is what?
My wife's name?
Yeah.
Madge. Madge Keefer. She was a fiable. And her dad and uncle worked a farm that her grandfather owned. And so she maybe didn't do a lot of work on the farm. She helped her mom with the cooking because her mom, I mean, back then in farming, you had 3 meals a day, every day. And they weren't just sandwich meals most of the time.
Substantial.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can remember the time when I could eat a half a chicken with no problem, a lot of other vegetables. But now here at Carol Lutheran, I have a time getting 2 pieces done.
So when you two, where were you married? Here?
We were married at a parsonage in, we were going to Morgan Chapel Church at the time, which was on Woodbine Road. And that church was connected with Mount Olive, which was on Gills Falls Road. And the parsonage for those 2 churches was right next to the Mount Olive Church. We got married at that parsonage.
Pretty.
Yep, September 1951.
Can you remember what she wore?
Oh my gosh, no.
Can you remember what you wore?
Yeah, I had a light green suit. Yeah, I remember that.
Were you nervous?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
And where did you go for your honeymoon?
We didn't have a honeymoon.
Okay. Went back to work.
Oh yeah, we were both working. We were both out of school, you know, really at that time, and she was working at a construction company in Sykesville. James O. Ridgely owned the company.
Sure.
And she worked in the office. Yeah.
And you were still on the farm at the time?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
So you mentioned a little bit earlier. Did you move on to one farm or the other? Where were you housed?
Well, from the time I was 14 till I retired from farming, I guess you would say, at 26, I lived on the same farm.
Okay.
Yeah, 280-acre farm on Hoods Mill Road.
Yeah. So there was plenty of room for the newlyweds to
Yes,
take up residence.
It was
there.
a huge farmhouse, and the owner of the farm, he kind of renovated a section that my parents and I didn't use, and we moved into that section.
How
It's a
neat.
different section of the same big farmhouse.
Did you have meals together?
Not really, no.
Okay. 2 separate households.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So you've mentioned on a couple of occasions that you retired from farming. Do you want to tell me how you came to that decision?
Well, at church one Sunday, a lady who worked at Sykesville Bank at that time asked my wife if she was interested in working at the bank. And she was talking to my wife, and I said to her, they wouldn't be interested in hiring a male, would they? And she said, well, I don't know. But the cashier's name was John McGee, who lived on Hoods Mill Road near where I knew him from 10 years. So he said, you talk to him. So I went very shortly after that, and talked with him, and the bank hired me. This would have been, let's see, in early 45, 46.
Nice.
No, that's not right. That's not right. Later than that. More like 60, because I was on from 14 on. I was on the farm.
Yeah.
So it was around 1958 or 9, late 50s.
Yeah. Well, you've always spoken very highly of that farming is a wonderful life, but there must have been something about it that you were tired of. What was that?
Well, it's wasn't really sun up for us to sundown, but it was almost that. It's 6 days a week. I mean, we didn't have any Saturdays off, and we had raised a lot of beef cattle and hogs on the farm, my last farm I worked at.
Yeah.
So you were feeding them on Sundays, naturally, mornings and evenings, and it was not a drag, but I had enough.
Yeah, yeah. Had you started your family when you started working on the bank?
Yeah, we had a daughter who was about 3 years old when I started working at the bank.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And her name is what?
Pauline.
And was she named after anyone in particular?
Well, my mom, middle name was Pauline, yes.
Very nice, very nice. Was that the only child you ever had?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So when you stopped working on the farm, did you stop living on the farm?
Yes.
Okay. Where'd you move to?
We bought a home on Keefer Road near Sykesville. And back then it was a 2-bedroom bungalow on a 3rd-acre lot. And the price of that was $10,500.
Oh my. And
we needed 1/3 down, 1/3, okay? And we didn't have $3,500. So the builder, we rustled up $1,500. And the builder, Mr. William Snyder, who built a lot of houses on that road and then built apartment houses behind where we lived in the wooded area, he came up with a second mortgage for $2,000 so we could get into that house. And our mortgage payment was $64 a month, and the second mortgage was $18.
Incredible.
So we were paying $82 a month for the house that we bought, 1957.
Was banking the right place for you? Did you wind up spending the rest of your career there?
Yes, I did.
You did?
I enjoyed banking, yes. I was always a people person, and I got to be more so when I got into banking, and I enjoyed that career. 35 years.
Well, you didn't stay a teller, did you?
Oh, no. I was a teller about 2 years, and I didn't have any schooling other than high school. But I moved to manage a branch that the bank had in Eldersburg after I was there about 2 years. And so when I worked at the 3 other banks after that as a branch officer and manager of the branch where I worked.
Gosh.
I enjoyed that.
Were you responsible for reaching out to find new customers?
Oh yes, yeah. And back then, early on, they didn't really push that issue because there weren't many banks. There wasn't much competition.
Yeah.
Really in our area, you know. And I can remember at one time. Let's see. I don't know what year it was for sure. Probably around the 70s. There were like 11 banks from Sykesville to Eldersburg. There were 11 different banks. I don't think there's that many there now. Some of them is merged and closed, and a few of them.
Were you in charge of making sure that the bank stayed involved with the community, like sponsoring a sport team or stuff like that? How would you set that up?
Well, I didn't really handle that.
Yeah.
I mean, you talk to someone and then just pass them on to someone else in the bank that was their responsibility. And we did do that. The bank did do that, yes, back then.
Neat.
Yep.
Were you doing personal financing, or were you doing business financing, or?
Back then it was mostly residential homes, people buying, and car loans, and very few personal loans early on that I remember, really. As people, the need for the money increased to kind of keep things rolling along, the loans increased. The different kinds of loans increased. They may have made some loans, some commercial loans to the bank, but that wasn't my responsibility at that time because the main office was in the little town of Sykesville. And I'm sure the businesses there borrowed money from the bank, but I wasn't close to that.
So when did you buy your first car?
Let's see. 1964 was my first new car, but we had I had one or two before that, naturally. But I don't even remember where I bought those cars. They were used cars. Oh, I do remember that because I just bought a new car recently. We did a Chevrolet, the first Chevrolet I ever owned in my life. I was always a Ford man because of the fact that I guess when I moved to that farm in 1944, the man that owned the farm owned a Ford dealership. And I know my dad had a 38 Ford, then I went to a 46, both used cars. And I just don't even remember, I had to have something because when we moved to, I know when we bought our first home, we moved to Keefer Road. That was in 1957. I had to be driving something, but to be honest with you, I don't remember what that car was.
I know
It was wheels.
you weren't still walking, right?
Oh, no, ma'am. No, ma'am. No.
So what was the first one you bought new?
At 64 Fairlane Ford.
Fairlane.
Yes, ma'am.
What color?
It was blue and a little bit of white top.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And what equipment did it have? What was it equipped with?
I think it, you know, it wasn't automatic. It was stick shift.
Mm-hmm.
And
Did you have a radio?
oh yeah, radio. Had a heater. I can remember hearing people my age and older than me really talking about cars. Did not have heaters back the road. I mean, I ran into a few people here at the village, and that was kind of before my time.
And how about air conditioning?
I think it did, but I wouldn't want to be held to that either, really.
Did you ever drive it fast?
No, I was really never a fast driver.
Okay.
No. Well, and when you know you kind of have a female friend with you a lot of the time, most of the time, I think that kind of cools that down a lot, really.
I think that's a very profound insight. Yes,
Yeah.
very much
It's
so.
but maybe 5 over, but I was never a fast driver.
Yeah. You mentioned moving from bank to bank. How long, you know, after this particular move into the banking industry, where did you go after that?
I went to Woodbine Bank for 10 years.
It was a local bank.
In Woodbine, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I worked at Sykesville for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Then I went to Woodbine, and I was there 10 years. They opened a branch on Liberty Road near where I was a manager for Sykesville and their office, just down the road. So I got a fair increase to come with them because I knew a lot of people in the area.
Yeah.
And that was beneficial to me, really. I know they set goals for the bank. We'll reach these goals in 5 years, and we really reached them in 3 years.
Nice.
And I can remember when I went to another bank later on. In fact, it's the best bank I ever worked at. FCMB out of Frederick City, Frederick County.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of bragging a little bit, I told the president of the bank there what I just told you. And he said, well, Dale, the goals weren't high enough. Okay. So we move on to another subject with him.
Yeah,
But he was the man. I worked at FCMB Bank for 8 years. Then I transferred to Augusta Federal Savings Loan, which had their main office was in Baltimore. And back when things kind of hit the skids with the S&Ls, the biggest problem or what happened there was back then banks, well, small banks, well, Augusta wasn't a real small bank, but they didn't sell their mortgages like they do today.
They service them.
And some banks, Sykesville Federal, still does not sell their mortgages. Okay, but back then they didn't sell their mortgages, and I can remember in, I'm going to say 1970. Rates on CDs got high. I can remember when rates on CDs were 15.5%.
Gosh.
And mortgages were 17%.
17?
Yes, ma'am. I was working in the Augusta's office in the Westminster Shopping Center. You remember where Leggett's store used to be?
Oh, yeah.
We were right next door to them.
Yeah.
Augusta was. And it was 17%.
What'd you think of that?
Well, our country almost went down the tubes in. And it's getting to almost that point today, unfortunately. But that's a different kind of situation that's getting us there today. But Jimmy Carter was president back then. And that did change somehow. I don't know how that really changed, but I mean, the rates coming down, but that's what they were. I was putting a noose around the bar's neck, I'll tell you that right now. It was unreal. Of course, mortgages probably wasn't as high then, you know, that you were buying as it is today.
Number. They weren't the same amount of dollars.
That's right.
Yeah.
But the rate was so daggone high. Oh, it was terrible. And well, then interest rates on CDs started coming down, so then rates on mortgages started coming down. And there's always about a 2% difference there, you know, and between what the banks are paying on mortgages and on CDs, what they're collecting on mortgages. And there was a gentleman who had a $100,000 CD at that bank, and the president of the bank in Baltimore called me, and he asked me if I knew this gentleman who lived in Taylorsville, and he was a farmer, and I said, yeah, I knew him. So he said, well, back then, $100,000 CDs weren't real prevalent. And so when he came in, I said to this farmer, I mean, he had this CD at 15.5%. And I won't use the language he used, but being an old farmer, but he said, roll that over it was for 2.5 years. He had it for 30 months.
Yeah.
I roll it over for another 30 months and maybe I'll double my money. And I'll tell you this, he rolled it over for another 30 years, another 30 months, and at the end of 5 years, he had doubled his money. Honestly, truly. So I said, here in this chair. And it didn't matter whether you had $1,000 in the bank or 5 or 10 or whatever, you doubled your money in that period of time, over a 5-year period.
Incredible.
The second 30-month rate for him was about maybe 11, I don't remember what it was for sure, but it was less. But he had more to start with, you know, because the interest is adding on.
Yep.
And he doubled his money. Just unbelievable to me.
Well, why did the president of the bank call you about this particular CD? So you would go out and get him to roll it over?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Or when he came in and tried to retain him as a customer.
Yeah.
Because, like I said earlier, $100,000 CDs back then, there weren't many of them.
Yeah.
There were some,
Yeah.
but not like today.
Yeah.
You know, or in the last 10 years or so, whatever.
Boy, that's incredible.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. Did you ever run into situations where you wished you could help a customer, but your hands were tied?
Well, a time or two, yes.
Yeah.
And I made a loan or two on cars to young people who I knew their parents very well. And sometimes, a time or two, that didn't work out, unfortunately, and with the young person. And so you do learn that you have to judge somebody on their merits,
Yeah.
not on the merits of the parents, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. I know the gentleman who is the spokesperson for the Maryland State Police right now. I won't mention his name, but you see him on TV every now and then. His mom and dad would not co-sign a loan for him when he was like probably 19 or 20. And I made him a loan on his first car that he bought. And he comes here to the village because he has a great voice. He's a good singer. And he mentioned that time or two he's been here at the village when I've been in the group.
And I trust he did okay with his car loan.
Yes,
correct?
ma'am, he did.
Yeah. Okay. That wouldn't speak well for a police person.
Well, I knew his parents too, but and his grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
His grandparents lived right across the street from my wife's mother and father, so I knew them too. And at that time in Ellisburg, but his dad and mom just kind of, for whatever reasons, you know, I guess they figured maybe he's too young or whatever. I don't know.
Or
but I took that chance and
let him
I
grow
took
up.
some chances with young
Yeah.
people.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of young people, what was your high school? What was it like to go to high school? Did you change classes, or did you always stay in one room?
Oh, we had a few classes.
Just a few.
2 or 3 probably that we
Okay.
changed. English, social studies, math. I always loved math, still do.
Mm-hmm.
I was great in math.
Mm-hmm.
I could really add a column of figures, just go right down the column when I was in high school. Not quite that way now, but it's just not so bad. But we had an algebra teacher. His name was James J.B. Coberly, older gentleman, and we got new algebra books that year. And I know myself and 2 other students we proved 3 answers in that book wrong. And we put them on the board. We each had a section of the board. We'd work after school. And we worked in, you know, because when we come in we did the work, we had a different answer. And he kind of thought, you know, so we started showing him our work. And he said, yeah, you know, what we did was right. And we had the right answer. And the book was wrong.
Neat.
Yes, we did.
Very neat. Was there a subject you did not like?
English. I did not like English. And when I had to read, I never remember reading Macbeth and some of those other stories that we had to were required to read. I read them, but it was a chore.
That's not the class you got the A's in.
No, ma'am. English was my good subject, but and reading is so important to us, really, going through life, or coming through life, because almost everything we do, there's some reading to that, really, you know.
Were you involved in sports at all?
Not very much, no. I worked on the farm, didn't have a lot of spare time, and I mean, when I was a teenager, I can remember starting when I moved to that farm in 1944. I started working for 25 cents an hour on the farm, and I'm normally working evenings and Saturdays, you know, and feeding the stock and doing things, you know, that we did on the farm. And I got 25 cents an hour.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Well, you had a big movie bill, as I recall.
Well, yeah, and a gas bill too.
And a gas bill, yeah.
Yeah, but it was a life that I don't think I'd want to go back to that. Of course, today in farming, I mean, it's big time.
Mm-hmm.
Has to be, really. Back then, I mean, the farm we had there was self-supporting, 280 acres more or less. I'm not real sure because I never saw the books of the owner, really. You know how that all worked out, and that was none of my business. But you know, it probably broke even,
Yeah.
maybe. You know, because as it went along and come along, things just got higher. Seeds got higher, fertilizer got higher, labor got higher. You know, now it's got to be big time, and equipment is higher. Oh my gosh!
Amazing, and
Yeah.
Done by computer and GPS.
Oh yes, a lot of
Just
it
amazing.
positively.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And some of them, the business end is 30 feet wide, as
Right.
opposed to
Yeah.
2 rows of corn.
There you go.
Ooh,
Now they plant on at least eight rows, maybe more. I don't know.
amazing.
We had 2 rows. You're right,
Yeah.
and they were this wide apart. You know, and they had to be so far apart in a row. And if it sprouted off, the stalk we went along and let's see, what was that called? We pulled it, like the growth that was coming off, so we pulled it off.
Mm-hmm.
Thinning corn, I think of it. Thinning corn.
Thinning corn.
We did that.
Did you take the tassels
Now
off?
they got stalks this far apart.
Yeah.
You know, I see them along the road now as I go along. Holy smokes!
How do you fit in, for heaven's sake?
Oh my! And the rows are not, you know, so wide this way.
Yeah.
Just to me, it's just
Yeah.
unbelievable. But the fertilizer they use today, liquid, you know, nitrogen, which is really makes crops grow.
Yeah.
Nitrogen, phosphorus, and potash were the 3 ingredients that we always used way back the road. Now it's probably more nitrogen than anything else,
Yeah.
and it's costly as the dickens. It's just
Were you using no-till? Had
No,
no-till
no,
arrived?
ma'am.
But you did contour plowing.
oh yes,
Yeah.
contour farming, and you know, we cultivated the corn, and oh yeah, had to be cultivated, you know, at least 3 times. Got to be 3 times.
Or it won't be
Well,
corn.
keep the weeds out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, keep the weeds out of it.
Yeah.
Now it's a daggone thick corn. Don't give the weeds a chance to grow. They're not in there.
There's no sunlight.
And they might spray the ground. I don't know whether they do that nowadays or not. Over the last probably 20 years, they've had no till, probably that long, and that is a big plus for the farmers, because plowing that ground and getting in the hair and getting the ground ready to plant the corn, a lot of work.
A lot of work.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
done that many times.
Plus, I understand it protects the topsoil if you don't keep clearing it and letting it blow away. You know, if you don't take the plants off the soil and leave it exposed, the wind's not going to carry the topsoil away.
Well, that could be. And you don't want to lose that topsoil.
Nope.
No, you don't. No, really. And now they, they have like 2 crops a year. Sometimes they grow, well, depending on when they harvest barley, is one of the crops now they use to feed animals. They'll come in and plant soybeans right behind that. And now they're getting, you know, harvesting soybeans now.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, you see them along the road, they're getting ready to be harvested. I've seen a couple fields already harvested.
Yeah. What was happening with the technology in the banking industry while you were there?
Well, it's improved immensely since I got out of there. I know we had computers, you know, and that scared me half to death. And I worked, well, when I went back to, I never got on a computer much while I was in the front office, or back office, or wherever. But I retired from banking when I was 62. And let's see, 62 to 32 would be 94. Retired in 1994. And the personnel officer said to me when I sent my resignation in, said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I don't know." I said, "I'll go down here to the food store and run a cash register during the day, you know, do something like that for 2 or 3 days a week." I didn't want a full-time job. So I said, "Okay, so I'll let you know. Don't do anything for a few days or a week." I said, "Okay." He called me back and he had a job in Eldersburg, at a branch of the bank I was working at. I was working in Westminster, and there's FCMB Bank out of Frederick,
Yeah.
and they needed a teller. So I started as a teller in 1962. So I thought, okay, and 2 or 3 days, I worked 3 days a week. I was in there, 8:15, we opened 9 o'clock, and closed at 3, and 3:30 I was gone. No paperwork,
Not bad.
and I loved that job.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked there 6 years. And that was how I really wound up my banking career. I was in banking 35 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you recognize the equipment?
More or less the same, although what I started to say was it would go back to that computer. I never used a computer to get back in here and work it, and had this computer, and my immediate boss was a female, and the manager of that office was also a female, and fine lady. I got along with her fine. But I used to say to her name is Janice, and I'd say, and I won't say what she said to me, just punch the button, If it's wrong, we'll get it corrected. But I always had a fear of punching that button, But she was kind of right. She was a kind of a computer whiz, I guess.
Yeah. Was there any big change in what the expectations were for a teller about accuracy on the drawer and accuracy of the transactions and accuracy? Did that change any in the time you were in the industry?
I don't think so much, because that was kind of expected from the get-go. And, we had errors. I've had my share of them, I guess you would say. Not all that many, but you do have errors. And you go back over your work, and we always kept tapes, the tape that we had on the machine, they would always run a duplicate, because the customer might want a copy.
Yes.
But then we would have a copy, then we could go back and see where, you're looking at the check, and the check was $100, and you put in $120 or whatever. Oh my, that's not right. So that's where my $20 is. I'm short $20,
Yeah.
And so you always use those kind of things to try to trace back. And most of the time you found them. Sometimes you didn't find them. Yep, sometimes you did not find them. Yeah.
Wow.
And the bank, we didn't have to eat that personally, but that went on our record naturally. Any teller there that what's going on,
Went on your record?
Well, the bank record.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it didn't go on a record,
So I guess if a teller had more than just an occasional mistake, they were not long for the industry, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, it always depends on size. You all quarter, 50 cents, you can't find it. We never put it in. You always had to put a slip in.
Yeah.
And but it was, I believe, from when I started in banking as a teller in 1962. Yep.
Can you think of any other field you wish you had gotten into? Had you not overheard that conversation at church that day, was there another field you would have liked to try out?
Well, but when I was working on a farm, I somehow found out about a job on the CP telephone company, and I had to go to Gaithersburg to take this test. And I was, born on a farm in Carroll County in South Carroll, and didn't know hardly where the roads went to when you got to South Carroll. And I had to go to Gaithersburg to take this test. That was a trip. But anyhow, I guess it was an X-ray, said I had a curvature in my spine. And back then, they would climb the poles, the spikes go up the pole to do whatever they had to do. And I wouldn't be able to do that, or that would be a handicap for me, or whatever. So I did not get that job prior to my banking experience, really.
Did anybody else ever mention the curvature of the spine?
No.
It went away?
Well, it never bothered me. All that hard work on the farm, it never bothered me, really. But I was, I guess, is the word naive, I guess, and didn't kind of stand up for my rights or whatever we want to say. And so just said, okay, bye.
Did you have hobbies? Was there a hobby that you pursued?
Well, I collect baseball. I'm a great baseball fan, always have been. When the Orioles came to Baltimore in 1954, I've been a fan of the Orioles ever since. Through the lows and the highs, and not many highs, a lot of lows. But I collected baseball cards for about, I guess, probably 20 years. They'll become my grandsons. My son-in-law's not really interested in those, so I've told my grandson, when I go, they're yours.
I hope they appreciate that.
Back then, let's see, there was 2 or 3 makers of great baseball cards, and I can't think of the name of the ones. I always bought. Do you remember any names of baseball cards?
Fleet bubblegum.
I think Fleet was one of them. And but anyhow, I bought the same kind. Geez whiz, I can't. I've been out of it, but because when I first started, it was like $7 or $8 a year. You buy a box of cards this long, and I buy a book and put them in, okay, in plastic sheets. And the last I thought, and I bought was like probably $38, $40, and it's about half as many cards. Okay, I thought, heck with this, I had enough of this, so I quit collecting them. It wasn't Fleer, Fleer was one brand. Daggone, I can't think of it.
As soon as you quit trying, it's going to come to.
Yeah,
come to
there you
mind.
go.
It always works that way. It always does.
But you know, and like I said, I've been with the Orioles high and low. Yeah, I still am. So, you know, just you got to grow your own. Anybody that's got any player that's any good, you think they're going to give them up to somebody else?
So
Not in the right mind, they're going to do it. You got to grow your own on the farm. Down
So
on the
what
farm.
was your reaction when the team left town?
Well, they're still here. The Orioles still here.
Oh, the O's. Okay.
Oh yeah,
I'm thinking the Ravens and Colts.
the
Sorry.
Colts.
Yeah,
You say it's
thinking
Colts. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was never much football.
Yeah.
I watched it. Had a tough game yesterday for the Ravens.
Yeah.
But anyhow, if the kicker had made the kick, they'd won the game. But
Unbelievable.
those are the things that come to us.
And that's how you
Move
go.
on.
You say you have to grow your own team, huh?
Right,
You think that the Orioles organization has done that?
heading in that direction.
Yeah.
They had a general manager back the road. How long ago it's been? His name was Sid Thrift.
Mm-hmm.
He gave away the farm system the Orioles had. And for a couple major league players, one of them was Glenn Davis, who was with, well, I think one of the California teams before he came to us. And he was never any good with the Orioles. And they gave up about 5 rookies to get him. It's like this year when McPhail traded, last year I guess it was. McPhail traded Bedard, you only got 5 players for him, and traded Tejada and got 5 players for him. That's the way it works.
Yeah.
When the Irish is going in reverse back to Ravens, see? And you lose your farm teams.
Yeah.
You lose it. You lose the players
How are the farm teams financed? Is that something
by
that
the major team.
The team who has the farm team pays the freight?
Right,
Wow.
all the way down. Yes.
So all of those expensive tickets are supporting a farm team.
Some of it, that money is, positively. Some of that money is. Of course, the Yankees, they spend it, you know, as the time goes by.
Mm-hmm.
$423 million they spent last year to get 3 players.
400.
Yep. Sabathia and Teixeira and a pitcher from Toronto. And I can never remember his name either.
Yeah.
But just $80 million for 5 years he was.
So if
Yeah,
you
it's
can
unreal.
if you can go to the game, do you go, or just count on watching it on TV, or
The
catch it on
village
the
had a
sports
bus
page?
trip to the game one time since I've been here. We've lived here 3.5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I went on that bus trip, but other than that, I haven't been back. Camden Yards is a beautiful ballpark. One of the greatest.
It's very famous.
Positively.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, you know, getting there and parking the car and doing whatever.
Yeah.
I would never go in a car. I would go on a bus. But
Yeah.
maybe the response to that trip from the residents wasn't that great.
Yeah.
I don't remember how many we had on that bus that day, but it was probably 40 people at least.
Yeah.
But the bus hall is 55 or 60. They want to fill the bus, maybe. But that's okay. I watched on TV. You can see it better on TV. You don't get replays on TV.
Well, that's true.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sorry.
In the
you don't
field.
get replays at the
Yeah,
ballpark.
at the field, yeah.
You see replays on TV. Yeah.
Yeah.
So really, as far as I'm concerned,
And they do put
it's
the
almost
cameras in
better,
the good
other than
spots.
going to the ballpark.
Yeah.
Yeah. The ballpark's a great experience, really.
Do you take your grandkids? Do you think your
We go to
grandkids?
the Keys games.
Ah.
I have a grandson lives in Frederick, and he's a little bit on baseball. He went to University of Maryland for a couple of years, and he got into agronomy, and he worked at, well, 5 years he worked at golf courses, a couple of golf courses. Now he's changed a little bit. Now he's in a store that sells supplies to golf courses. So it's kind of in the same field as his education prepared him for.
Yeah.
But he gets me tickets. We go to the Keys game.
Cool.
Yeah, he does.
I hear it's good baseball.
Yeah, it is. Well, that's a farm team in the Orioles.
Yeah.
And those guys on this farm team, they're trying to get up to the Orioles. And they're busting their butt to get there.
Play
The Orioles, when you get to the Orioles and sign a 5, 6, 8 year contract or whatever it is, I mean, what the heck? You don't have to bust anything. I mean, we were going to be here for 5 years or 7 years or whatever it is.
And big salaries.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh my. Yep.
Unbelievable.
Yep.
Unbelievable. Have you been to the Halls of Fame? The
Yes,
different
ma'am.
Hall of Fames? Yeah.
Went there one time when we were in New York State on vacation. We were with our daughter and son-in-law and 2 grandchildren.
Mm-hmm.
At that time, I don't know how long ago this has been, probably 10 years ago. And but I got there, and we went back the second day. That is a beautiful place, and they have things there relative to baseball that you just would not believe.
Really?
Oh my, spikes and bats and oh my, all kinds of stuff. Uniforms. Yeah, from way back the road.
Did you come away with a new appreciation of any particular players?
Well, of course, the best players kind of get there.
Yeah.
I should say mediocre, but the average player really doesn't make that. You got to have pretty good records to get there. And you see some of those records, it's kind of unbelievable, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, Cal Ripken, the record he set, playing 2,600 games straight, every game. Unbelievable. He broke Lou Gehrig's record, which was 2,130 or 31 or whatever it was in that area. But he went on for 500 more games.
That's incredible.
Just unbelievable.
Yeah.
Nobody ever is going to touch that.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Well, it's a lot of things to get into that. It's I can remember back when Jim Palmer and Brooks Robinson and those guys, all of that era, whatever team they on, if they didn't do good that year, they could take a cut. They got a cut. Jim Palmer got a cut one time. Cut his salary because it was year to year to year. You signed up every year. And if you didn't want to sign with the Orioles, you went with another team. Well, we don't want him because he didn't do that. This past year, he wasn't so good.
Yeah.
They didn't have guaranteed contracts like they got now.
Wow.
Just unbelievable.
Do you think that's helped the sport or hurt it?
No.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think it's made it worse.
Yeah.
As far as fans concerned.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, of course you got guys that hit home runs and pitchers that are really great, but there's not all that many maybe, you know.
Yeah.
And some of them, I don't think they produce up to their ability to do things because they don't have to.
Yeah.
Sad.
Yeah.
I think it's sad. Yeah.
For sure. For sure. Well, you know, we have occasionally youngsters coming up today struggle with the fact that life seems to be a whole lot more complicated than it used to be. And it's kind of hard to find your way through life. Have there been any rules or philosophies or mottos that you've tried to hold on to as you've moved along through life?
Well, I think my philosophy has always been you want to treat other people like you want them to treat you. And young people today got a lot of challenges that we didn't have as youngsters, you know, and it's peer pressure. Probably in the class of 41 when I graduated from high school. I don't remember right offhand, but probably half of those people lived on farms. Maybe not half, but I'll say 25%, guaranteed 25%. And the lifestyle in them is much different than it is today, you know, much different with young people.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when we went home from school and did our farm work, we didn't feel like getting out and carrying on and doing things that gets us in trouble, you know, or things we shouldn't be doing. Or, and I didn't run around with boys. Well, it was a couple that we rode bikes together, you know, and this kind of thing. But how far you go on a bicycle, you know. But really, back then, you just didn't do as much of that as they do today. And parents today, I give a message at church just yesterday on Layman Sunday, and parents today expect their children to be in all kinds of sports. And that's not all bad, but sometimes I think they overdo it. Holy mackerel. I mean, kids they go to school, and in the evenings, on weekends, on Sundays, you see them at the ballparks or here or there. Just every time they turn around, they're going to some kind of sport. They're in 2 or 3 sports. Not one, but 2 or 3.
Yeah.
You know, doing things. And they want to do it, I guess, maybe, and the parents think you ought to do it, so there you go. Times change. You know, trends are different. We didn't have the energy to do all that when we were coming up, basically. And I don't think like the kids that didn't live on farms didn't have a lot of things to do back then. Yeah.
Did you socialize much with the kids who were not on the farm?
Well, we didn't do a lot of socializing, to be very honest about it.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't remember doing any of that, no. Well, we didn't have transportation,
Yeah.
you know, and there was a movie theater in Sykesville at one time, up over the bank,
Mm-hmm.
and we used to go there on Saturday nights. I went with another boy and his mom and dad. We'd go to Sykesville on Saturday night, get there, say, 6 o'clock in the evening, and the streets would be crowded with people. And let's see, this is probably 1946, 7, probably. And nowadays, at 4:30, they roll up the streets almost. I mean, you go in Westminster, you don't see anybody on the streets hardly. You know, just, good gosh, I can't believe this. But they go to, I guess, shopping centers, you know, which we didn't have any then, and just different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very much so.
But we used to go to the movie, and they used to have the movie. They had a little catch there. They would show a little film, you know, of additional to the movie,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, the segments.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and then you have to go back next week and see what's going to happen.
Oh, you
It's
missed
like-
the chapter, the serial.
Oh,
next.
yeah. It's like my wife watches. She watches General Hospital on TV, and she's watched that show probably for 25 years or more. Most
And they
of the
still
time.
haven't worked out their life
No,
problems. Have
no,
you
no,
noticed?
no. Just different people having the same problems.
Yeah.
Used
Well,
to.
going back to the movie serials, do you remember any of the characters that were the
No.
serial people? Was it Buck Rogers or was it?
I remember there was Indians involved,
Uh-huh.
and you know, cowboys. I guess you would say, yeah, cowboys. But I don't remember the names or anything.
Yeah.
This goes back a while, 46, 47.
Well, you're doing fine. You're doing fine, Dale. Gee whiz. Gee whiz.
But you know,
Yeah.
it's we've had a great life. My wife and I have been married 58 years,
Congratulations.
and back in September,
Mm-hmm.
and it's kind of like a two-way street. I always say, you know, some males get chauvinist, I guess, and some women get that way,
Yeah.
want their way all the time.
Yeah.
That's not the way it needs to be.
No.
Not going to work. And the sooner you learn to do differently,
Yeah.
work things out.
I didn't ask you about we mentioned the fact that you have your daughter,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't ask, I presume your wife did or did not continue working once your family started.
She was off a few years with that daughter until she was about 5.
Yeah.
Then she went back to work.
And what was her field?
Bookkeeping.
Ah,
Yeah.
number people. Y'all are numbers oriented
Yeah.
people, right?
Yeah.
So what's
And she was she worked for a lady who is still living. Very good friend of ours. This lady back in August was 102 years old, and she lives in an assisted living home near Taylorsville.
Mm-hmm.
Can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. It's one near Taylorsville on the left-hand side going towards Taylorsville.
Mm-hmm.
We visited her a couple times already since she's been there. But she was, my wife was head bookkeeper at that company originally.
Yeah.
Well, this lady came on board. Oakland Mills was flooded with water, you know, the dam.
Yeah.
Flooded Oakland Mills. She worked at Oakland Mills. This lady that came on board with my wife, her name is Harding,
Mm-hmm.
and so she took over the bookkeeping. And my wife was out a few years, 4 or 5 years, I think it's 5 at least. And then she went back, and Isabel was in charge. And I mean, they would do the bookwork, and if that sucker was off a cent, or 1, 2 or 3 cents, they're hunting for it, and the boss come in, and I won't use the language he would use with them either, but he would say, here's 5 cents or 3 cents, put that book away. Yeah, I ain't gonna do it. Gotta be here someplace.
Gotta be here.
And my wife's that way, always was. And I'm the same way, just about, with math.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
So did your daughter inherit this talent?
No, she was worked at preschool at a couple of churches. Messiah Lutheran, she worked there preschool for, I don't know how many, 8 or 9 years, and then she went to West of Freedom. She was there about 10 years at least. She's retired now. Our son-in-law was a Baltimore County firefighter, and he went in when he was 21, worked for 35 years, and he retired about 1.5 years ago at 56.
Congratulations.
Yeah. And so they're both retired now, and doing some things that you do after you retire.
Yeah, yeah. Do you
Yeah.
spend a lot of time with them now that they're retired?
Not a lot, no, not really.
Yeah.
We see them just about every Sunday. We go to church. We still go down to Gaither Church. That's Gaither Church is a little town just west of Sykesville along the railroad.
Yeah.
And we go there to church, and we see them just about every Sunday. And our grandson comes down for Frederick, and we have a granddaughter who lives in the 8th Manor Apartments, and we kind of meet at Bob Evans' for breakfast. Just about every Sunday, not every Sunday, but 3 out of 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you mentioned the one grandson and the baseball cards.
Yes.
How about the granddaughter? What's her field?
She works at the Chamber of Commerce here in, oh, wait a minute, is that what it's called here in Frederick? I mean, Westminster? Chamber of Commerce, that's there off of 140 97. Chamber of Commerce, that don't sound like I'm saying that right. But anyhow, yeah, Kirkhead Chamber of Commerce.
Okay.
She's been there about 8 years. She loves that job. Yeah.
You only got 2 minutes of tape.
Okay. Yeah, we're going to wrap up the tape very shortly, and I wanted to make sure that we gave you an opportunity to say all of the things that you consider important to say about, spending your entire life here in Carroll County. Anything we've neglected to cover? Anything you want to be sure to get on tape?
Well, I don't know really. Really, I think that people today expect a lot of things when they start out. We didn't expect very much, and back then we didn't have very much, so we didn't know any different.
Yeah.
But kids today, I mean, golly, their parents have a car, a boat, or whatever, and they think they should start with a house and a car and a boat, And in reality, it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
I think children today, and maybe the parents are part of the cause. Back, I can remember when I was a child, before we moved to that farm in 1944. I mean, we probably got oranges once a year at Christmas.
So your advice?
We got a treat at Christmas.
Yeah.
Now they have them every day in the store all year round and all that kind of stuff.
So your advice would be to take your time acquiring stuff and enjoy the process.
Amen.
Yeah.
Positively.
Okay.
And I think, their lives would be better served as a result of that. I mean, in getting the things as they come to them and appreciate what they get.
Okay,
really.
well, let me say thank you very much for your time today. I sure appreciate and enjoyed the opportunity to capture some of your recollections for the Carroll History Project. Thanks so much, Dale.
Thank you very much for asking me to be part of this.
Great.
Appreciate it.